this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. My guest today is somebody that I connected with a while back. We were trying to figure out before we started recording exactly how, thinking we have a local Facebook group to thank. But this is one of those opportunities where I meet somebody who's doing something really cool. And because I have this platform, I get to share them with you all. So Melanie Snyder, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Julia. Happy to be here.
Woo! I'm happy to have you. So fill everybody in. Our topic today is going to be what you have created, which is a pretty incredible virtual group practice that is multi-state. So I thought you would be a great person to talk to because I get a lot of questions about this in my consulting business and in the circles that I travel, people that are considering doing the same. And there are some hoops to jump through and some additional challenges, which have not been a hindrance for you. So I thought you'd be a great person that I could pick your brain, but I'd love some background. So fill everybody in on how you got to be doing what it is that you're doing now.
Yeah, of course. So I own Tri-State Psychotherapy Group, and I think it's good to start there because the name obviously describes part of our services and what we do. I live in New York State, but as some of us know, it borders many other states. Two are Connecticut and Massachusetts. Massachusetts is about 30 minutes from where I live. And so it's really common that I might be in Massachusetts, and I lived in Massachusetts before New York, and actually I was licensed in Massachusetts first. So if you're a social worker in New York, you know that to get your LCSW, you actually have to be under supervision for 3 years, whereas in Massachusetts, you only have to do 2 years. So it was easy for me to get my independent license in Massachusetts first. And so that's actually where my private practice started, even though I lived in New York State. So, which happens.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing people in Massachusetts. I connected with this woman on Facebook who was basically like, I have a connection at Boston University. I don't do private practice, but feel free to use this contact. And I was thinking, wow, like as someone starting in a private practice, like what better way to build a practice than to have like referrals from a college? That's great. I probably could build it really fast. So fast forward, that's like a lot of my referral source. So when working with college students, what do we know about college students? They usually a lot of the time don't live in the state that they're going to school in. And so I was having a lot of students say, oh, I live in New York, I live in New Jersey, I live in Connecticut. Like, can you see me when I'm home? And I'm like, no, I can't see you when you're home. Like, I'm only licensed in Mass. And then, light bulb, wait a second, there's a need for this. And so that's kind of where the multi-state, practice idea came from, which is like, we live in an area, New England, where there are so many schools. There are so many schools. And a lot of the students don't live like across the country. They live locally. But in different states. And so finally a year went by and I could get my independent license in New York State. And then during winter break, I could continue that care with my clients who went home to New York. And then Connecticut, similarly, I had students that BU who were going home to Connecticut. So I kind of just decided like, this is a good name. Tri-State Psychotherapy Group is really solid. It really like gets to the point. And those were kind of the 3 states that I decided to contract with personally. And mind you, this is only private practice. Then a year later, I was a little lonely and I was like, well, I think I'm ready to like level up and I
Yeah.
think I'm ready to take on group practice. I know, that people want to work in group practice
Yeah.
and so there's a need for it. So I'll try it out. And so that's kind of where the group practice started was like,
Mhm.
oh, well, I have this name, this private practice, and it's kind of a perfect name to like expand. It's not like Melanie Snyder counseling, right? It was a name that really could do a lot, and it has.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. So a little bit of what you were doing before you started the private practice?
Yeah. So before I was doing the private practice, kind of right out of the gate, I was working in the psych field. So obviously, when we get a psychology or social work degree, it's not assumed that we all go into psych work or mental health work. But I started with crisis, like a mobile crisis team. Then I
Yeah.
worked in the emergency room doing psychiatric evaluations, and I loved that work.
Mhm.
Then I went into like collaborative care. So collaborative care was at the time like kind of a new idea, which is a really good idea. Basically, you go to the doctor's office, you say, I'm depressed, and then they connect you with a company that like kind of like hires therapists to do like mini sessions. They're usually about 25 sessions. So very high burnout because you're doing 25-minute sessions like all day long. And so
Wow.
I'd have like a caseload of like 90 patients. Um, so after a while, like, it kind of just was like, okay, like this isn't like working. This isn't sustainable. And I was getting my independent license. So at the time I was like, but I really collaborative care, like it was a little bit of a glimpse into like, yeah, this is kind of therapy. Like this is a little bit of like, this is what you'd be doing anyway. But it was more advantageous for me to kind of like leave that and be my own leader and not have to deal with like bureaucracy and issues with kind of upper management that we do see in these collaborative care companies, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And I actually work with a lot of people who were in collaborative care because they were like, hey, I left this company, can I work for you? And it's really sweet. So I have I think it's about to be 3 people who actually worked with me at that company in my private practice, which is kind of cool because I did like the people I worked with. So that was nice.
Wow, that's awesome. And I'm definitely sensing a theme that you're somebody who identifies a need and then you very quickly find a way to meet that need. So tell us a snapshot of where your practice is at now, the size and kind of the breakdown. Are there specialties? Do you strictly serve college students? Have you broadened the scope a little bit? What are things looking like now?
Yeah, so I know I get asked this all the time. My family, my husband's like, "How many people do you have now?" And I'm like, "Ooh, let me check." I feel like I just took on an intern for the first time, which is like a week old, so it's like it's always expanding. But I think I can confidently say that I have 15 therapists and 1 intern. We are a multilingual practice. We have a
Mhm.
Mandarin speaking therapist and 3 Spanish speaking therapists. We are very into cultural diversity. That was something that I like very much prioritized and focused on because I wanted to meet the needs of the community. I want to meet the needs of like the diversity that exists in the world and in our communities and in our states. And so that's kind of where we're at. We do have most of them are virtual, but we do actually have some physical locations, which one in Massachusetts. We have 2 offices in Massachusetts that are
Mhm.
rented, and then an office in Albany, New York, which is sublease. So it's just someone like kind of like renting out to us. Another therapy practice letting us use their office. So
Nice.
we give the option to do in person, we give the option to do virtual, we do couples work, we do family work, individual therapy. There's some whisperings of like starting some groups, which obviously, as you probably know, groups are a little bit hard to get off the ground. Um, so so yeah, it's a fabulous practice. I had someone leave and then come back. um,
Wow.
yeah, I have an email in my inbox that I have to respond to of another person who wants to come on. And I literally keep saying, all right, I'm good. I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to hire any more people. Like
Mhm.
this is a comfort area for me that I can kind of stay in. And then I get an email like, hey, so and so who works for you said that like you may be able to give me like, some hours. And I'm like, wow, like this has exceeded my expectations, and it's amazing. I mean, yeah, when people ask about it, I kind of have to refresh, like, oh yeah, wow, like this is like a big practice,
Mhm.
like yeah, and so if you had asked me 4 months ago, part time versus full time, I would have said only two people, including myself, are full time, and now there's like six of us who are full time.
Wow. So give us an idea of the timeline of growth. So you officially started it what year? When did you hire your first person?
So what's the year? 2024. So when I say it's new, it's like very new. Like I'm pretty sure that the technical, like when the LLC was formed, was April of 2023. So it is like a year and a half. This is a group practice that is only a year and a half. And I mean, in April, I hired a few people that were part time. So it has grown a lot in a
Mhm.
very short amount of time, um, which I don't like. I'm still kind of in disbelief. Like, how did this happen? I was just talking to someone about the practice, and we were kind of looking at exact numbers to look at the growth. But like, it was notable. Like, your practice has grown like a lot in a very short amount of time.
For sure. That's incredible. And it doesn't sound like that was necessarily your vision. You kind of got it going, and then the need was there in terms of, I'm sure, the clientele, but also additionally people that are seeking you out, which is so nice when they're getting feedback from people that work for you, or your reputation precedes you, which is great. So what were some of the biggest learning curves? Because the first thing that pops into mind when I think of multi-state and
Yeah.
mostly virtual, even though you have some physical locations, with everybody kind of being in different places, the
Hmm.
cohesion and the managing requirements and licensure and communication when you're mostly connecting with people. I'm assuming there are some clinicians that you've hired that you haven't met. Is that right?
That is
In person.
correct.
Which I can
Yeah.
also see the same in my practice. So I've had that experience, and I can really attest to how the right fit can feel like you've known them forever and like you have met in person, even when you haven't. But what were the biggest learning curves in the beginning?
Well, it definitely like, missed a few things that I shouldn't have missed. When you're working with multi-state, you have to be very in tune with the state regulations. So Massachusetts is a lot more lenient than New York, but even like how much sick time do you have to give people for every hour they work? Disability insurance, Massachusetts doesn't require it. New York State does, for my size. Um, like truly, like in New York State, you have to not only register your business with the um with federally, but
Mhm.
on a state level, you have to register your business and with the Office of Professions. So
Mhm.
like you wouldn't know that a lot of the time until you like realize it somehow. There is no checklist, unfortunately, when you have a multi-state practice. Like even in Gusto, which is the platform that I use, they will tell you like here's a little checklist of like what you want to do, but like they don't know a lot of the things that have to actually be done. So to make sure that you're in compliance with each state, and I don't have anyone living in Connecticut, so thankfully my business doesn't have to be registered there. We just see
Mhm.
people, um, but since people live in Massachusetts and live in New York, I have to follow both regulations, which are they definitely are different. There are definite differences, and so it's yeah. And I'm doing it all on my own. I don't have an
Mhm.
assistant. I don't have any like person saying like, "Here's what you forgot to do. Here's what you still have to do." It was kind of trial and error,
Mhm.
And for sure, like I didn't get it right the first time.
Yeah.
But it's just important when you're opening a multi-state practice,
Mhm.
you need to focus on where your staff are living, obviously, and you need to have a registered business in the states that they're living in. But you have to make sure that you check with like kind of every kind of nook and cranny, every crevice of like, oh, should I check with the Office of Professions that I'm good? Should I check with the state that I'm good? Um, and that's really the only way that you can make sure that like you're kind of compliant, because it's not there's no information like out there really. It's
Mhm. So a lot of phone calls and research, but what would you say were some of the most helpful resources in the beginning as you were trying to figure all of this out? Because it seems like a lot of hoops to jump through. There's
yeah.
clearly a need and benefit to not only the clinicians that you're providing this practice and place for them to work, but for the clients. And it's frustrating that it can be so challenging and there are these roadblocks, but you didn't let them stand in your way. So what were the most helpful resources?
Well, definitely talking to other therapists. There was a woman that I talked to with a multi-state business. I don't think we overlapped in any of the states we had businesses in, but she basically was helpful in saying, just pay really close attention and look for answers. So, like connecting with other group practice owners who had multi-state practices was really helpful.
Mhm.
Um, that definitely was really helpful. And then yeah, of course, like the online kind of therapist connections are really helpful. There are a
Mhm.
few checklists out there for individual state practices, like the Thriving Therapist woman, forget her name, has a checklist. And then there's like a few others that like you can pay for. And I don't think I ended up paying for anything because I kind of just wanted to figure it out on my own and not have to pay
Mhm.
a bunch of money. Um, but but yeah, basically it was kind of like just looking for like guidance. And a lot of it is just like, okay, I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And the like Gusto was actually pretty helpful. It kind of like tells you like, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that. It was only like a fraction of what like I needed to do
Sure.
on the back end, but like I think just you kind of hodgepodge and you just figure it out.
Okay. That's helpful to hear. I guess I'm also wheels are turning that I mean you could now create this checklist and share it and monetize it potentially, but that's the business side of my brain. So with the experience that I've had in group practice, I can really relate to rapid growth, but also hearing that you're doing so much of this on your own, you're taking on an intern. I'm sure there's some supervision provided to some of these clinicians. I'm sure there's a range in terms of their experience level and you're managing a lot of the administrative side as well. Are you still carrying a caseload?
I am still carrying a caseload. I see about 15 clients a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
The clients that I have have been with me for a while. I also wanted to start seeing couples. And so, like, of course, like I always need a challenge. I'm that kind of person. If
Mm-hmm.
you're watching this and this resonates with you, like if you're that person that always needs a project, like you're always going to be looking for something. So I figured like a safe one was like, okay, let's try couples therapy. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see if you like that. And I really like being a
Mm-hmm.
couples therapist. I think it's really cool. So I have taken on a few new clients, but I keep telling myself just try not to take on too many new clients because you really want to like hold space for you have to hold space for supervision and things that come up last minute and all of the back end,
Mm-hmm.
administrative things. I don't mind doing it, but timesheets at 5 p.m. when your kids are like hungry, like not the most fun thing.
Yeah, I can very oftentimes feel like you're being pulled in a million directions and we
Yeah.
can't give 100% to every single thing at any given moment. And so, yeah, a lot of it is prioritizing and feeling good with good enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. And not being afraid to ask for help. I mean, especially as the profit is there, that it has been invaluable for us. And I would never have been able to grow to the size of the practice that I have now without our director of operations. There's no way because I wouldn't have felt as confident that she's kind of at the helm of the ship doing everything that she does so efficiently and effectively. And to do all of that and juggle a caseload and all of your staff is a lot. So I give you a lot of credit. So my next question is about the team itself. So tell me some of the ways that you have maintained cohesion and this team feel with people living in different states and serving obviously different clients across those 3 states. What are some of the things that you've done that have been helpful in that regard?
I hold, I hold space for the therapist in a lot of different ways. One way is that I provide group supervision every week, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a space that they can kind of just come and feel like they can just talk about their cases. I don't facilitate the group therapy. I was able to step away from that, but they really like who does the group, and so that's really good. I also do a spring and a fall staff retreat, which has been really successful. This year we went to Kripalu and we kind of did like a relaxation
Mm-hmm.
kind of spa day. That was when I got to meet some people for the first time in person. And I've
Yeah.
gotten super good feedback just from everyone being like, since then, I just have felt a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people from a financial standpoint, if you were really just going into group practice for the money, would be like, that's a waste of money. To me, if I could do a staff retreat every month, I would, because that's
Mm-hmm.
how much I care about them, and that's how much I care about showing them that like their work matters to the
Mm-hmm.
practice, matters um to the clients. And it's kind of like how I just say like thank you so much. And we have like a group chat like in Google that like everyone will just kind of like type in if they have like a funny like joke, or like if they want to share kind of a high point of their week. It doesn't even have to be about clients.
Yeah.
But we're really close, and that's notable. Like people will in my group practice will kind of say like I just like really like everyone who I work with.
Mm-hmm.
We do a pretty good job at like vetting people and making sure that like their energy is going to kind of match other people.
Yeah.
um and I feel like confident that like everyone who works for me is like pretty happy. I make a huge effort and a huge point to not micromanage. I'm like anti micromanage. So like if they hear from me, it's because I had to bring something up. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm never the one to be like, oh, like you misspelled this word in the note. Can you go back and fix it? I give them a lot of autonomy and a lot of space. And I think that that is a really effective strategy, because a lot of people who are in jobs with bosses, their like number one complaint is like, oh, I'm micromanaged and like I can't wait to leave. Like I do not like this style. So I put a huge emphasis on give them space, let them kind of have autonomy, because it gives them like the sense of like having dignity and independence. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, you're working for me, but like I want you to kind of feel like you're working, in a little micro private practice, and that I'm here for you if you need me.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful concept and I fully support it. But I also know what it's like to have this be your practice, your reputation, your
Hmm.
license. So, how do you
Yeah.
balance that? I'm sure you probably have had to develop some systems, onboarding and training them to get them up to speed. And then, what is the oversight, even if it is not from a micromanagement standpoint, to make sure that they are compliant? Because if they're virtual, there's so much trust that they are doing what they say they're doing and providing quality care, getting their notes done on time, completing their treatment plans. Like I'm just thinking from my own experience. So how do you balance all that out?
Yeah, 100%. I'll send out like general reminders. Like
Mhm.
maybe it's to one person, but if it's not urgent, I'll send out general reminders.
Yeah.
Please make sure to prioritize editing, updating, creating treatment plans. And I have access to see whenever my staff like create an event, and I'll like see within like 5 minutes someone adding a reminder to like do treatment plans. That's just kind of like the style that works. I really am lucky. Like I have not really had to be on top of someone saying like, you keep making this mistake over and over and over again. Like, how can we prevent this? usually on board in the onboarding process,
Mhm.
we're very thorough about here's the expectation. Here's kind of what you need to do. You need to have your notes done within this amount of time, treatment plans done within this amount of time. I can easily see if they haven't done
Mhm.
notes because I do timesheets every week because my staff are paid weekly.
Mhm.
Um, and so if they haven't done a note, like I'll see it. And so I feel like it only takes a couple times for me to say like, hey, you need to have notes done within blah, blah, blah hour amount of time that they like, it won't come up again,
Mhm.
um, which is great. So I really like, yeah, I think it's just like at the very beginning, making sure that the expectation is like very, very clear. Also putting it in the, policies and procedures manual. Like,
Mhm.
I don't expect that everyone's going to read it, obviously. But I can always reference it. Like if I had to, I could say, you can reference this policies and procedures part
Mhm.
and see that this is the expectation and what's going on, like how can we help you kind of uh, do that.
Mhm.
But I mean, knock on wood, but yeah, I kind of lay it out at the very beginning so that it's like an expectation, like I think that is actually what is most effective is like, don't kind of tell them after the fact, because I think then what that does is like, it makes them think that that's not a priority. Like,
Mhm.
oh, she doesn't really care that her notes are in on time. Like it didn't, but if it comes up in the very beginning, people tend to think like, oh, this is definitely important. Like if it's one of the
Right.
first things that are being said.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so glad that it's worked for you. So I have to ask, now that you have experienced this growth, kind of reflecting back, do you have a clearer vision of where you would like things to go? So are you still actively hiring? Do you ever plan to expand to other states?
I think one of my therapists is actually in New Jersey because one of her clients, I think, moved there. But so we do have that one extra state with one therapist.
Mhm.
But my plans to expand, I didn't ever have like a clear plan of what I was doing. I just kind of hoped that I could accomplish starting a group practice. And so I am definitely like, go by the seat of your pants like person. I no, I'm not really hiring. I think that, like I said, there's one person that like is interested in coming on. Um, and so the question is, do I need to put a really firm boundary in place and like say yes to this person, but like that's really it? Because the question then becomes, okay, if I have 16 therapists, um, at what point do I need to get like an assistant? And I do have an administrative assistant who's also a therapist, but it's
Mhm.
like when she's not doing therapy with clients, she can help me on the back end. But I think that like that changes revenue, that changes like the whole financial structure when you hire someone in a non-clinical role
Mhm.
to kind of help you. And I just kind of have to figure out if like what my priorities are. So like
Mhm.
if I were to expand, what are the benefits versus what are kind of the detriments? Like, is that going to be more stressful to me? Is this a comfortable level that I'm at right now? Um, of course I have fantasies of like buying a building and then like having like a building and like kind of being like self-advertised, right? If you're on a main street and you have a building that's yours, that's a form of advertisement. That's a win-win for everyone. So there's that. And then, yeah, like, expanding into like having an office space in New York State, probably not Connecticut, but there's always question of what is the need. And I think for now, there's no plans of expanding.
Mhm.
Yeah, at least today.
Yeah.
Today, there's no plans of
Well, it sounds like you
expanding.
really just take it clinician by clinician to see if they are a good fit and where things are at within the practice. But it does sound like you have some ideas. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes to fruition in the future. So, what is the best way for people to find out more information about the practice or follow along for any updates?
Yeah, we do have a Facebook page. It's not well maintained yet, but it's a goal. It's just Tri-State Psychotherapy Group. And then we have a website. Tri-State Psychotherapy Group.com. And that's how you can get a hold of like me or like, anyone. And yeah, we have updates on like other offerings. Like last summer, forgot to mention this huge project. Last summer, I did a summer program for high school students who are interested in psychology and social work. And it took up my entire summer. But there's like updates on like what new things we're offering. So yeah, the people can kind of stay up to date on what Tri-State is up to in that way.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I'll include the links in the show notes to make it easy for people. Thank you so much for being willing to come on the show, share your experience. It's really inspiring, and I am sure that it's going to answer some questions that some people in the audience had. So
yeah,
thanks for coming on.
People can reach out if they have any questions about multi-state practices for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for that. If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.